slowly these primitives kind of get introduced. Like you have, originally just the idea of like a ledger with Bitcoin, and then you have the concept of smart contracts even to begin with that, and like, then you have scalability from the past couple of years, and you have, all these other kind of new primitives that have been layered into crypto. And I think each one of these major new primitives that has been added to the space has just kind of like opened up the like design space really of like what kinds of applications can be developed.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with WAGMI Ventures. On today's episode, we have Bryce Ferguson and Jack Kearney, co-founders at Turnkey. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast where we do snapshots with interesting builders, founders, and investors from across Web3. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with Bryce and Jack at Turnkey. All right, what's up, everybody? This is Tanner, and this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast. I'm here today with Bryce Ferguson and Jack Kearney, co-founders at Turnkey. Guys, how are you doing today? What's up?
Doing great. It has been a busy start to the new year.
Definitely. I feel like that's probably all around, and I'm excited you guys made the time to chat. I think it's going to be really interesting. So just by way of introduction, I'd love to learn a little bit more about each of your stories with kind of a particular lens of sort of the evolution of your crypto journeys and kind of how that's led to the genesis of Turnkey. Would you guys maybe, wherever you want to start, kind of hop in on that?
Perfect. Yeah. So I got my start out of college in management consulting, but thankfully did not stay there too long and caught the crypto bug. So I had some friends who were over at Coinbase and was talking to them one day, and they said, listen, Bryce, you are more obsessed with crypto than I am, and I work at Coinbase, so you just need to come here, interview, and see what it's all about. I ended up jumping over to Coinbase, which is actually where I met Jack, and just had an awesome time seeing how crypto was evolving, getting to really push on kind of the bleeding edge of crypto. Was the first PM on Coinbase custody, and Jack and I worked together really closely on building that business. And kind of wore a lot of hats during that time. So was doing everything from sales to regulatory engagement to product work, kind of whatever it took to build the business there. Got to a point where I was kind of stalling out a little bit on my Coinbase journey and ready for something new, and got put in touch with Trade Republic, which is kind of like Robinhood for Europe. So was able to move over to Berlin, build their crypto product from the ground up, build the team from the ground up, and launch that all across Europe. And during that time, it was pretty interesting. I moved from working on building custody to using a lot of the custody providers on the space. And with that, just realized that there was a lot of pain in trying to integrate with these folks, trying to actually build applications on top of custodians. And so Jack and I got together in 2022, and we were kind of seeing things from the same angle, and really just wanted to take a new pass at crypto custody and key management and started Turnkey together.
Very cool. Okay. Awesome. So, I'd love to maybe dive in on what Turnkey does and what you guys seek to enable with what you're building. Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Cool. Yeah. So Turnkey at the highest level is very flexible infrastructure for crypto wallets. We realized that most custodians at the time were geared towards this buy and hold institutional use case. And because of that, they weren't flexible, they weren't scalable, and they just weren't geared towards developers at all. We were seeing people building more and more in this space and needing that flexible infrastructure. And so created Turnkey in response to that. From the perspective of a user of Turnkey, it's a very simple API. It allows you to programmatically create private keys, sign any arbitrary transaction across blockchains, and then create policies around how those private keys are accessed. And this can be used in everything from wallets as a service to on-chain automation and all different flavors of use cases where you need private keys.
Very cool. Okay. So I'm always curious, just taking a quick step back, you had mentioned you guys were seeing things similarly, you and Jack, about, working in custody. And I guess I'm curious, really, like, what gave you guys the conviction that this was a big enough problem to warrant building an entirely new venture around? How did that look in a little bit more detail?
I think like basically Bryce and I both had a problem in the jobs kind of immediately before starting Turnkey, which would have directly been addressed by Turnkey itself, like the product. So I think like we just both felt this pain acutely in our day-to-day jobs, and we're like, wow, if only this product existed, then we could have, like, Bryce's case, build the Trade Republic crypto arm a little more directly. In my case, had a lot more flexibility doing, on-chain operations at Polychain. And so I think just that direct kind of, desire for a different experience or different product in the space really led us to start Turnkey and have the conviction that at least us in our former jobs would have wanted to use this product.
Super interesting. Okay. Hey, everybody, quick thing here. We're excited to announce WAGMI Advisory, your home for all things fundraising, hiring, and partnerships. This is all about supercharging your project with the WAGMI network consisting of over 20,000 executives, investors, and builders in crypto, all ready to come alongside your project to help it succeed. Get in touch at team@wagmiventures.io to learn more and figure out if WAGMI Advisory is the right fit for your project. Now, let's get back to the show. Turnkey is already working with a bunch of major names in Web3. And so I'm curious from your experience so far, it sounds like you yourselves had some felt experience with the problem, but I'm curious what's one or two things you've learned since launching Turnkey that you knew you had to get right, or you learned you had to get right for the products to succeed, and maybe a little bit about some of the thinking behind those insights.
Yeah, Turnkey was kind of an interesting path versus other startups. We had a lot of context on this market, and we, for the first, call it 10 months of Turnkey's journey, locked ourselves in a room and we're building what we knew the market needed. With that, I think we were seeing that other providers on the space had really optimized on security and, some very specific use cases, but none were able to combine security, performance, and full flexibility into one package. And so I think as we've gone out to market, we've realized that going as low level in these primitives and really viewing private keys as infrastructure has allowed for just an explosion of use cases on top of Turnkey. Flexibility is a little bit of a throwaway word at times, so it might be helpful to also explain kind of what that means. We have very low level primitives around things like what are the assets that we support, what are the types of transactions that we support, what is the mapping of users to private keys, or the different policies that you can set in place. And so going super low level there has just allowed people to never be blocked by Turnkey, to really be able to build whatever product UX they have in mind with those kind of low level tools.
Super interesting. Okay. So I'm always curious, this is a bit of a recurring question on this podcast, but I'm always curious, kind of two sides of the same coin, where, the first question might be around kind of the earliest challenges, where as you were, it sounds like you guys had a bit of a head start in your awareness and kind of sensitivity to the problem you guys were tackling, but there's always challenges, right? There's always obstacles that come up in building something. And so I'm curious for Turnkey, like what were maybe one or two of those earliest challenges and what did that look like in solving that together?
Yeah. So, I guess from my side, some of the earliest, like really hard things we were doing, from my perspective, like a ton of just really challenging technical problems right out of the gate. Turnkey is a product that, as Bryce was talking about, like it has to be super secure. Like this is not the kind of product that you can launch and just kind of, follow the classic Silicon Valley phrasing of like move fast and break things. Like we really can't break things. We really don't want to like jeopardize,
Sure.
Keys and stuff. And so I think out of the gate, we knew that we had just to hold ourselves to a really, really high bar. And so that just meant that, even before we could get to the point where we're receiving customer feedback and, just notes on the product, we really felt like we had to lay this foundation. So a lot of conviction just on like building in that right direction. You kind of just have to, like, as Bryce said, in a vacuum, really like push it forward without necessarily having, other than our own prior experiences, any real kind of like real-time market validation. And then just, putting our head down and actually like building it, which took a lot of effort. And so that was like, in my mind, that was like one of the early, very challenging things.
Definitely. Super interesting. Okay. So flip side of that question then, if challenges might be a little more on the negative side, I'm always curious too about like, when you guys got to market, what were one or two of the earliest surprises, kind of in a positive sense, that you realized you had the traction you kind of expected to have, or, whatever form that might take, whatever different categories. I'm curious what maybe some surprises were that were positive ones.
I think as we first started going to market with Turnkey, we were expecting a lot more kind of investment fund use cases and people who were doing more active trading to be using Turnkey. And we really got pulled in a different direction with folks building at the application layer, folks who were integrating wallets within their experiences. And it was really cool to see the market just really yank us by the hair in this other direction and push us towards something where those low-level primitives still were really effective. perspective.
Super interesting. Okay. So crypto is such a unique space where it's almost impossible to look a year, 3 years, 5 years out and expect the landscape to look the same, right? And so I asked this question with kind of that in mind, but I am curious, like, what's your ultimate vision for where Turnkey's going? Because it's already doing such cool work, but where do you hope things evolve or progress over time?
Do you want to take this one, Jack, or do you want me to take it?
Yeah, maybe I'll take a shot and then you can go as well, I think. Yeah, so basically I think we see Turnkey as being a true platform in the space. So I think a lot of other tools on the market, a lot of other like developer tools within the crypto landscape are, almost inherently just the product they're delivering is, I think, kind of capped in terms of the breadth it can have and the sort of like number of use cases it can directly address. And as Bryce was saying earlier, Turnkey is really like focused on flexibility, focused on building the primitive more than the full package solution. And I think we think that over the long run, that ends up meaning that like it's just more directly applicable to a larger variety of markets. And so yeah, we really hope that we continue to kind of layer in these primitives, and we continue to also see new, creative, interesting abstractions that compose those primitives together in ways to create developers or to create basically experiences in crypto that just otherwise wouldn't really be possible. So in ways, it's kind of just more of the same. But I think, Bryce and I really have a feeling that there's a lot of breadth to this product.
I think tacking onto that as well, starting with private keys is a very, very sticky and strategic place to start. It's a super hard problem that, frankly, a lot of the dev tooling companies in the space just don't want to touch. It takes a lot of expertise. It takes a lot of kind of tinfoil hat paranoia. And our view is, over time, we want Turnkey to just be a platform to make it as easy as possible to go from 0 to 1 with whatever ideas you have for new crypto applications. And so we'll be kind of expanding the scope of what's possible under the umbrella of Turnkey APIs.
Super cool. Love it. Okay. So I'd be remiss to not ask you guys a little bit more about the space more broadly, if that's cool. Just a bit of a transition, because I'm curious, since you guys have been in the space for a while, I'm always curious to ask people, like, how has crypto changed since you've been in the space?
I think Jack can take this one because he's been in it for a long, long time.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the crypto space just like the only, I think, constant in the crypto space is change. That's kind of like a trope or whatever, but it really has just continually kind of changed in very dramatic ways, and it just always keeps you on your toes. So when I first got into crypto, it was like, I think, like 2 bull cycles away from being even partially mainstream. So at the time, this is 2011, in June in 2011, there was kind of like a mini like hype cycle where Bitcoin rallied all the way to, I think, to like $31 or something, and then crashed down to like 10. And right in that crash, I found out about Bitcoin and was like blown away. And it was just a super cool new technology to explore. But at the time, it was like, you couldn't find a job in Bitcoin. You couldn't think you were going to make your career working in the cryptocurrency industry or anything. At that time, it was like, 10,000 people, maybe even less, just kind of chatting about it on, forums on the internet. And, I think like it slowly, these primitives kind of get introduced. Like you have, originally just the idea of like a ledger with Bitcoin, and you have the concept of smart contracts even to begin with that. And like, then you have scalability from the past couple of years, and you have, all these other kind of new primitives that have been layered into crypto. And I think each one of these major new primitives that has been added to the space has just kind of like opened up the like design space really of like what kinds of applications can be developed. So for me, it's that kind of broadening, both in terms of the people that are, coming into this space, as well as the products that even can be developed here, which is the most exciting thing and kind of like the most interesting aspect of how the space has changed over time.
Love it. Super interesting. Okay. So to add a layer here to basically the same question, but with a little bit more of an opinion, I'm curious, what do you guys think is going right in crypto, and what do you think could be done a little bit better in crypto here in 2024?
I think,
go for it, Bryce.
I'll go first, and then you chime in, Jack. I think crypto has really shifted its focus towards how do we actually build very usable experiences with the current tools that we have. A big thesis around Turnkey was people were kind of shooting too far towards decentralization, and to actually build very useful products. A certain level of centralization around key management really unlocks UX for now. Longer term, definitely want to decentralize that, but I think there's just been a lot more appetite towards, hey, we need to focus on usability. We need to focus on how to abstract away crypto from folks. And I think the people who are really doing this right, crypto is often kind of a footnote in the FAQ. So one of our clients, Goldfinch, for example, they launched their new product, Heron Finance, and used Turnkey to power the wallets that are part of that. And it's really just an easy to use investing platform. And behind the scenes, it's all powered by crypto. And it's just a single line in their FAQ to show that it's powered by crypto.
Yeah. And so I guess tacking onto that a little bit, like I think what crypto does really well is it puts resources behind the problems that seem impossible to solve and, would be solved, other than crypto on like multi-decade timeline, and just bring some of those problems back to being solved on like a 4-year timeline. So I'm thinking about things like all of the new novel cryptography that's been, developed because of the crypto industry, kind of. It's hard to imagine, without a massive industry kind of fueling that effort, that actually making the same kind of strides it has, it's hard to imagine that basically making the same strides it otherwise has. I think crypto is a terrible thing, and this is kind of what Bryce was getting at just having like very pragmatic solutions to use this really interesting new technology. So for some reason, we as an industry have kind of just all agreed that, in order to use crypto, that means that you just need to have a seed phrase. You also need to have back that up in some way, or just totally YOLO'd it. And maybe you'll lose your seed phrase, and along with that, all of your crypto history and assets and stuff. And for some reason, we've just accepted this. And I think that's a kind of ridiculous thing. Storing a seed phrase. My dad actually got me into crypto in 2011. He's someone who's really kind of, I wouldn't say he's super technical, but he's aware and using technology, and, he's not just somebody who has no concept of how to use technology. And I would never expect him to back up a seed phrase successfully. And, with that, if the crypto industry doesn't offer any sort of alternative for how to onboard into the industry, the alternative is just people like him just will never come into the space. And so I think Turnkey is really trying to offer very pragmatic solutions to onboard more people into the space, to build new applications in the space without necessarily compromising the ethos of crypto, but also just, I don't know, being a little more reasonable about where and why some of those attributes of the industry really matter.
Yeah, I love that quest. It's obviously so important for getting new folks in, and here at the kind of timing we're at with sort of the market cycle, it does seem like an especially important problem to get right. So
totally.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you guys always have interesting, founders always have really interesting perspectives on, other projects happening outside of their particular domain. And so I'm curious, what is most exciting to you in crypto outside of Turnkey these days? Different projects or verticals or narratives, whatever kind of jumps out is most interesting to you.
It feels like one of the big trends that will be very successful in this next bull market and next cycle is going to be all around payments. It's just growing incredibly, incredibly fast. And there is the most product market fit around some of these financial use cases of crypto. And so I'm just very excited to see much higher throughput payments, whether that's B2B and cross-border or consumer payments, that can just really start to onboard a new generation of users, make crypto much more mainstream.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm in the same boat on that answer. And I think it's worth going back, to the kind of history of crypto and kind of at least the earliest days when I was into Bitcoin, remittances was always one of the very tangible, real problems that was, addressable by crypto and a theoretical level. But, it took a long time to get fiat rails to a place where, things were practically usable. It took a long time for stablecoins to be developed even. It took, a long time for the fees on a lot of these networks to be reasonable for someone who's trying to send back, $50 or something to someone in another country. And so I just think like for the first time, this like original vision of cross-border payments is like really, really possible and happening. And that's super exciting to me.
Love that. Okay. So crypto is such a unique space. We've touched on different ways this is true, but I'm always curious if you had any particular advice for other founders in crypto, maybe kind of based on your experience. If you could maybe frame it in terms of like giving yourself advice at the beginning of your crypto journey from kind of your wiser, older self now. What do you think the most generalizable lessons might be for founders getting in the space kind of here in 2024?
I think it's really easy in crypto to find yourself pigeonholed in a certain niche or corner of crypto. And a lot of the rules of the broader industry are just really, really different from what you see elsewhere. So it's been very valuable for me having been at a place like Coinbase where I've got kind of a high level view of the broader industry. So that's one, is just making sure that you're not heads down on one specific problem without taking the broader crypto industry into context, because you won't be able to connect the dots as easily. And then I think the second piece is people in crypto, like Jack was saying, can often just be really academic with how they're approaching a problem. And it leads to really beautiful products, really interesting, complex products that are used by no one. And so taking a pragmatic approach, thinking about what is the actual job to be done of this product and how is crypto a differentiating kind of technology that enables this use case and enables this job to be done, rather than just using crypto for crypto's sake or trying to build the most complex decentralized service for something that can already be done in Web2.
Super interesting. Okay. Awesome. So guys, a couple last questions here for you. This is another kind of recurring question here on this podcast, but if I put to each of you, the future of crypto is blank, how would you fill in the blank?
Man,
you want to take this one, Jack?
Yeah. I mean, look, I think to me, it has to be about like, it has to be something like the future of crypto is global or something, or the future of crypto is everyone. Like, I think we built now, crypto when Bitcoin, the Bitcoin white paper came out in 2009, I think. Or I guess the network, I think, was launched in 2009. We're, 15 years into this thing. Like, we've laid some foundation. We've developed a lot of infrastructure. It's time for people to use this. If crypto is only ever used by a couple million people casually, like that to me is like a failure of the whole project. So if we're not really like broadening our perspective and trying to understand how literally everyone in this world can use crypto and can benefit from the financial services that really, are born out of this technology, I think we've sort of like set our ambition too low. So yeah, I think, and I think, the arrows are aligning there. Like, crypto networks are scalable now in a way they just were not in the last bull cycle. And, I think projects like Turnkey are really addressing a lot of the user interface, user experience challenges of crypto. And I think you put both of those things together, like, the stars are really aligning for this technology to actually be rolled out to everyone. And so, yeah, to me, that's what we need to do as kind of an industry now.
Love it. Okay, guys, last question here. What is your team working on right now? And what's the best way for people to follow along on the journey?
So a lot of what we've been working on recently has been around wallets on Turnkey and how people can better integrate wallets into their applications, into their other developer tools. So we're going to be adding a lot more functionality there, and also just making it easier than ever to use Turnkey as we kind of scale to more and more folks. Can follow along at Turnkey HQ on Twitter, and feel free to drop us a DM there if you're interested in building on Turnkey.
Perfect. Guys, super interesting work you guys are doing. I love the perspectives too, and I'm really grateful you guys took the time to come on the show. So have a great upcoming weekend here and take care.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Tanner.
All right.
Thanks, Tanner.
Bye-bye. Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, go ahead and maybe give us a good 5-star rating and subscribe wherever you're getting your podcasts so you can get all the latest conversations with the most interesting crypto founders, investors, and builders from across the world. Thanks so much. Have a good one.